This is your First Alert Weather Breakdown, a deep dive into how weather works, with meteorologist Jake Lambright.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining me. I am First Alert Meteorologist Jake Lambright here, and of course, want to give you the latest update, of course, on what we're expecting this weekend whenever it comes to all things winter weather. I'm going to start you off here in full screen while I work on getting some of our comments up through our Facebook page. So if you're watching right now, you can watch on the KSLA News 12 app. You can find that on your Roku, Fire, Apple TV. You can also watch along on the KSLA News app as well for your mobile device. This stream and many more in the days to come will be available there as well. If you're joining me this afternoon from our Facebook stream, you can leave your questions, and I'll be getting to those here in just a couple moments. And also on TikTok today, I'll be watching the questions closely and getting to some of those a little bit later on. All right, let's go ahead and dive into what to expect as we go into the day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you joined me this morning, the timeline hasn't changed a whole bunch. We'll start off with a look here at the European model. Friday at noon, again, throughout the entire day, during the daylight hours on Friday, I'm not expecting any kind of winter weather whatsoever, so no mix, no snow. We'll see some rain later on in the day, and then once the sun sets during the overnight hours, that's when we see a shift from liquid rain into sleet, maybe some freezing rain as well. So here's a look at future track. As we head into Friday evening, you'll notice by dinner time, even the northern parts of the Arklatex, McCurtain County and our extreme northern southwest Arkansas counties, not dealing with any kind of a wintry mix by that point. But just after midnight, that's when things start. And I'm going to go back here and kind of take this timeline a little bit slower for you. Around 10 p.m., you see that mix starting to dip a little bit further south of I-30. And then by the daylight, or by the time the sun rises on Saturday morning, you'll notice that mix extends all the way down to the I-20 corridor. I see, real quick, I'm going to take one question asking about Baton Rouge. So if you're traveling to Baton Rouge this weekend, again, roads in the Arklatex could be dicey, especially if you're along and north of I-20. When it comes to Baton Rouge, there might be some minor wintry precip, some ice accumulations possible. However, not a lot, not enough necessarily to cause major impacts compared to what we're expecting in the Arklatex. Going back to future track, though, again, 8 a.m., we start to see that mix work its way down to the I-20 corridor. This according to the European model, of course. And as we get later into the day, you notice that mix dipping a little further to the south. Now, that is 5 to 6 p.m., so that's dinner time Saturday. And you'll notice some areas like St. Augustine County, Sabine County, Sabine, Natchitoches, and Wind Parish still dealing with rain. And these are areas where overall, I don't think we're going to see much in the way of winter weather impacts. We'll keep things going a little bit more. You'll notice that mix seeps into those areas during the late overnight hours, late Saturday night into early Sunday morning. And then from there, we've got one final push, maybe some flurries on Sunday morning for a chunk of the Arklatex, but by noon, we're really done with any kind of wintry precipitation. So again, that clearing out by midday on Sunday. That's a look at the European model and looking at the kind of a modeled profile of the atmosphere. Like if we were to look from the ground all the way up to the top of the atmosphere, or at least the level of the atmosphere layer that we're in here on the Earth's surface, the European model's hinting at more of a freezing rain scenario, whereas the American model shows some freezing rain possibility, but sleet. And that's important because with freezing rain, pure freezing rain, we would have a lot more in the way of impacts across the Arklatex, whereas if we have some sleet mixed in, those impacts could be a little more minimized compared to a strictly freezing rain scenario. All right, let's talk about the graph model. This here is the only high-resolution, shorter-range model that we have in view, and this is not going to take us out the entire timeline, but this is going to do a better job kind of pinpointing who will see any kind of wintry precipitation and exactly when. So you'll see the graph model has us transitioning from rain to snow a lot quicker. I'm not in agreement too much with this timeline, at least yet. Of course, it's important to monitor data. That's what we're doing here. We're going to be monitoring all avenues of data as we go through the next couple of days. But for now, I'm just not buying that we're going to transition from liquid rain to freezing rain and sleet that early on. However, closer to midnight, I do think along and north of I-30, again, those areas still expected to see some wintry precipitation by that point. Then as we get towards 7 a.m., it looks like I'll be able to take you out a little further here. After sunrise, that's when things really start to fill in. In fact, by 10 a.m. there, you'll notice a lot of eastern Texas, our eastern Texas counties, except for those far southern ones, likely dealing with some freezing rain or sleet mix as we head into the early morning hours on Saturday. It looks like noon is going to be the cutoff on this model so far. And again, areas along and north of I-20 will be mostly dealing with that sleet, freezing rain by that point. If you're south of I-20, it's really more hit and miss, both the freezing rain, sleet aspect, as well as even some isolated showers. Again, those stay very isolated according to the graph model. So we've got a lot more data that we need to get in to compare to kind of see what the most likely scenario is. Of course, if you caught our podcast episode this morning, I actually talked with the National Weather Service in Shreveport meteorologist Ryan Knapp about weather balloons, the data that they provide. And one thing that's going to be huge is having that real-time observed data of what's going on in our atmosphere. I want to get to the American model real quick first, and then we'll stop looking at models and talk a little bit more about specifics. So let me switch things over here real quick for us. Again, kind of similar scenario. This is Friday evening. The GFS, or the American model, is a little bit slower whenever it comes to transitioning, at least our northern areas north of I-30, from liquid rain to sleet. You'll notice that mix finally making it a little further to the south around midnight, starting to slowly push south of I-30. And then by sunrise Saturday, most locations along and south of I-20 dealing with a mix. And that's one thing that's been very solid and consistent in a lot of guidance. And this is part of my forecast as well so far with what I'm looking at is I-20 and north. By sunrise Saturday morning, you'll be dealing with, or we'll see, freezing rain or sleet, a wintry mix shortly thereafter. I do say I've got questions coming in, Facebook, TikTok. I'm going to be getting into those here in just a moment. But for now, I'm going to kind of fast forward that timeline for you a little bit further. You'll see by dinner time, still our southern counties and parishes, the American model and European model are in surprising agreement with this, not seeing as much in the way of freezing rain, sleet, wintry mix, anything of that nature, keeping it more rain the closer you get to Nacogdoches, Texas, Hemphill, Texas, Natchitoches, and Arkansas. So very important. If you're out that way, your impacts are not going to be zero necessarily, but a lot less compared to the majority of the Arklatex. You'll see by early Sunday morning, all of us are dealing with some kind of mix, or maybe even some light snow working its way in behind it. I know many of you are probably rooting for snow. Most of the area not likely to see snow, minus a few flurries there on the tail end of this system. So we're taking a look there at the American model. Let's go down. Before we take a look at another graphic that I have, I do want to remind everyone that we do have first alert weather days in place starting Friday evening during the overnight hours, Saturday and Sunday, due to that chance for wintry precipitation and cool temperatures as well. Winter storm watch is in place. That starts 6 a.m. Friday, and that might be a little bit confusing. However, we're not going to see wintry precipitation or impacts in the Arklatex until after the sun sets on Friday night. Now, another thing I want to note, too, is this is a winter storm watch right now. Of course, unless all the data does a 180 and just shows absolutely nothing here within the next 24, 48 hours, we will likely see this winter storm watch upgraded to a winter storm warning. That doesn't necessarily indicate a change in impacts. Winter storm watch is issued a little further in advance, and whenever it looks like we're going to keep winter weather impacts in place across a lot of the area, when we get closer to time, that will automatically be bumped up to a winter storm warning. All right, I do apologize in advance. I'm going to mute myself here for just a second, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm literally going to mute for about a second or two. All right, sorry about that, guys. This weather roller coaster's got my allergies acting up, so I had to blow my nose there. But again, winter storm watch in place through noon on Sunday, likely to be upgraded to a winter storm warning as we get closer to time. Again, that doesn't mean that the impacts are going to change a whole lot. They could. We still got some wiggle room in the forecast, but just because you see that upgrade doesn't necessarily mean that impacts are going to be worse per se. So let's talk about the snow and ice potential across the Arklatex. The light blue shading out in McCurtain County and some of our extreme northern southern Arkansas counties there. That's where we're looking at maybe half snow, half ice. Then as you get into the white shading, that's mostly ice, a little bit of snow. For those of us in magenta, mainly along the I-20 corridor, we're looking at mostly ice and maybe a little bit of rain worked in there. And then that light green shading, again, our extreme southern East Texas counties and southern Louisiana parishes are looking at mostly rain with just a little bit of ice mixed in there at the tail end of this event. Another thing to talk about real quick, and then I'm going to take your questions. I've got about 5 more minutes with y'all. So Low temperatures, several nights are going to get dangerously cold. In fact, I wanted to show you kind of a regional view of the Arklatex because what we've got on our 7 days for Shreveport, which is still cold, but you'll see we're looking at temperatures as of right now, we're forecasting upper teens for Sunday night into Monday morning. You'll notice near north of I-30, temperatures could potentially be in the single digits. Yes, you're saying that correctly. 3 degrees potentially for low into Queen, 5 for Idabel. And these are air temperatures I'm showing you. I'm not over-exaggerating these with feels like temperatures or temperatures higher in the atmosphere. These are ground level actual air temperatures. Not to mention if we have a light wind, it would feel even cooler than that outside. So something to keep in mind. Of course, it's going to be chilly out there as well. Here's your freeze forecast for the next 7 days. And for us in the Shreveport-Bossier Metro, Friday night, we're in the low to mid-20s. Upper teens Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, we're back to the low 20s. And then even Tuesday, we're in the lower 30s. For now, at least through the first half of the week, if not most of the week, I am expecting at least a light freeze. Of course, that's going to start off as a hard freeze, and then later on in the week, when we warm up a little bit, I'm still expecting a light freeze for the area. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of questions here. I'm going to start off with Facebook, and then I'll take a quick look at things on TikTok. So first question I have on Facebook from Joshua Carver. So is this going to be freezing rain and sleet around and north of Texarkana or snow? Let me pull up that map for you real quick. We'll talk a little bit more about it. So Texarkana, mostly ice, just a little bit of snow. So we're looking at more of a, depending on which scenario turns out to be more likely as we get closer to time. Some scenarios are showing, well, maybe we have a little bit of freezing rain. It shifts to a sleet and impacts are a little more minimized. Other scenarios are showing straight freezing rain. So Texarkana, expect more of that mix, that sleet, that freezing rain, and maybe a little bit of snow as that event wraps up. I see Roshan has a good question. Why is everybody in such a panic? And one thing I do want to note, it's important to be prepared, but not necessarily panicked for this. We could see some impacts. Thankfully, this is going to be rolling in on a weekend, but still important to stay weather aware with this. Make those preparations now. Sorry, just seeing some more messages there. You're going to want to stay warm, keep that heater going, have your blankets out, your winter coats, of course, and plan to stay off the roads on Saturday and Sunday. But we're going to get through this together. We're going to be streaming on our KSLA platforms throughout the weekend, of course, keeping you informed. Never want to panic anybody or scare anybody. But again, we're going to get through this all together. We'll be here every step of the way to keep you informed. I see Genevieve is asking about more specific totals. Whenever it comes to ice right now, I'm still thinking about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of ice in most places there in that magenta shading and white shading. And that could cause some local power outages, so something we're going to have to watch pretty closely. If we're on the higher end, closer to 3/4 of an inch, we could even see possibly some tree limbs down as well. Shelly's asking about freezing rain and ice starting in Texarkana. That will likely start late Friday night into early Saturday morning. Rebecca Witt saying, some are saying 1 to 2 inches of ice in Texarkana. I am aware that that's going around on social media, but those are raw models. They're not quality controlled, not a meteorologist. They're looking at them, forecasting a realistic scenario for you. Those are just kind of some worst case scenarios. So, out of the realm of possibility, no, but very rare and very exaggerated. There are very few model runs actually showing those extreme totals. LaShandra is asking for potential hazard, Shreveport-Bossier. Again, looking at the roads potentially being hazardous, some at least spotty power outages. With that much ice, kind of tying into Bianca's question there about can it pull down the power lines. It's a possibility, not a certainty. And just because we're seeing those amounts doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to lose power. So don't want to scare you in that sense, but some power outages will be possible. Heather's asking about freezing rain or sleet for the Marshall area. Right now, still kind of to be determined. Both are possible. I'm leaning a little more toward freezing rain, but sleet would be the better outcome for us and still a possibility for sure. I see Kimberly's asking about how Bossier's looking. Electricity going out is a possibility, but not a certainty for us. I'm going to kind of take a quick look at TikTok, and then I've got to get off. But Chief Meteorologist Matt Jones will be back live with you tonight at 9 p.m. And on our Fire TV Roku apps, I'll be live with another weather update for you coming up at 4 with our 4 p.m. newscast. So I'm just taking a look here at a couple questions. Raymond's asking about Arcadia, looking at mostly ice, maybe a little bit of rain in there to start things off. Roads probably going to be hazardous for Saturday and Sunday. I see some travel questions about the San Antonio area. The roads could be dicey. You'll want to check back. We'll have some more specifics on that soon. Shreveport, same thing. Mostly ice, just a little bit of rain. Road impacts, maybe some spotty power outages in there as well. And yes, the forecast has shifted a little further north compared to today. Taking a look here at a couple more questions. I see one, Jackson, Louisiana. I'm going to take a guess you're talking about Jackson Parish. Jackson Parish looking at mostly ice with some rain working in there as well. All right, so I'm out of time for now. I've got to run, kind of finish fine-tuning our forecast for our 4 p.m. newscast, so I will have more information for you then. Official data, of course, we're updating this forecast as needed, so make sure to stay tuned for updates. We'll have more for you a little bit later on this afternoon. All right, thank you so much for joining me, and of course, Chief Meteorologist Matt Jones will be back answering your questions coming up tonight at 9.